Welcome, welcome, everyone. I am so pleased to see you all here. I first congratulate you on taking this step in your health because you had a lot of different places that you could be. You could be sitting at home with that TV remote, clicking on Hulu and Netflix. So I appreciate the fact that you have chosen to be proactive about your health, to really seek a deeper understanding about how to select foods where it's not about a guessing game. Where, if you have been with me for a long time, you know that I am not into the guessing game. I really believe in merging what we refer to as ancient wisdom along with modern science. And our guest today is doing exactly that because you know me. I keep on saying test, 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 not best guess. You are divine, beautiful creatures, and you deserve the best. You deserve better than someone's guess. And I don't care how many alphabet soup they have after their names. I don't care how many years they say they've been studying whatever. I don't care how many degrees and certifications they have. Always, always realize that you deserve the best. And for me, what I keep sharing with you, that nothing is the best unless you have put it to the test. So tonight we have wonderful Dorian Grinnell, and he is going to be sharing with us how we can utilize inexpensive, practical, at-home tests to check our glucose and our ketones in order to optimize our food selection choices. Now, you may say, well, Michelle, so what? Who the heck knows who he is? I don't care. And what I'm going to share with you is his before and after. Okay, so are you guys ready to see this? Okay, let's go. I'm going to pull this up because you know what my mama says, the proof of the pudding is in the eating. And in this case, the proof of the pudding is what? Oh my God.
You're
Bam.
making me you're making me blush.
Oh, have mercy. You look sexy, man. Woo! If I weren't already taken, I'd be jumping on that plane to come see you. But in any case, without further ado, I'm going to introduce to you the wonderful, the phenomenal, sexy, hunkalicious Dorian. Dorian,
Wow.
before we go any further, tell us a little bit about your story and how you went from before to after. And give us a little bit of understanding of what does bioindividuality have to do with your phenomenal transformation?
Yeah. So thank you for that wonderful introduction. Back in 2015, I was 207 pounds. I had all the metabolic biomarkers that were going towards metabolic syndrome. I was on antidepressants. I wasn't doing at all well in my job, and things were really going downhill. A good friend of mine said, he's from the South, and he goes, Dorian, you got to give up those white devils. You got to cast those white devils out of your life. And I'm like going, what are you on about, mate? I don't do fad diets in any way, shape, or form. I've seen my wife do almost every diet under the sun, and I do not recommend the cabbage soup diet. My God, your house stinks, and other things as well. It's definitely not the way to go. So, but, I started hearing about a ketogenic lifestyle, a ketogenic diet. And so I read all that I could. I looked at the work of Lustig and Taubes and Volek and Finney and Dr. Nasha Winters and a lot of these metabolic doctors and the information that was on YouTube and other influencers and books. And clearly, as you start taking a look at it, the science seems to become almost unequivocal, and it has been studied since the late 1800s. It's been used in epilepsy in modern medicine for the last 30 years. So there's a lot of data set that is out there. But then if you go back, and if you go back 2.5 million years, just like your name, if you go back and you look at the ancestral records of what people were eating, the majority of the time, they were in a state of nutritional ketosis. they were eating low carb. When you try and go out into the forest, into the savannah, and you try and find carbs naturally, they are extremely rare. You might have to fight off a wild bee's nest to get some honey. You might have to find during a very short period of time that the berries will come into season, but you've got to manage to deal with bears and other animals for that, to compete with that same product. And the fruits and vegetables, some of the fruits and vegetables that we eat now are nothing like what they used to be before. They've been manipulated over 10,000 years by man and crossbred for high glucose and sugar counts. So when we really go back, we're there. And if you think of yourself, you're looking after your family, and you have a choice of picking tiny little seeds out of maybe a prairie, or taking down a bison and elk and making that into food for yourself that could feed your family for 6 months, what do you think as humans we would do? How do you think we got this massive brain that we had? This was from the advent of us being on a well-regulated ketogenic diet. And I think that it's a game changer in that respect, that finally we have a very affordable and quantifiable way of measuring for a quantified self and optimum health and well-being. There was a question that was kind of like pre-asked a little bit on, is it right for me for a ketogenic diet? And I think that's a great question, because it's all about bio-individuality. There was a famous Israeli study. It was on, I think about 890 people, 49,000 meals, and they tested glucose before and after. And everybody had a different response to the cookie or to the banana. My amount of metabolic damage is going to be different to the next person. The amount my pancreas can secrete insulin is going to be the next to the different person. I personally am sensitive to sugar alcohols. I might not get a glucose response, but I will get an insulin response. So I personally have to be careful with sugar alcohols. Other people do not. There are some people who have genetic SNPs, which means they are not predisposed to the ketogenic diet. It might not be right for them. And I think that's the important way. But just like you said, you test, you don't guess. And then you test, assess, address to see what is right for you. And so that bio-individuality comes in for important. So what is a well-regulated ketogenic diet? Well, in an easy phrase, because people think diet, it's the 4-letter word, it's a lifestyle. Like I've said, I've been keto since 2015. I had lost 47 pounds. I got down to a set point. I got that joie de vivre that, I felt when I was 24, that I could take on the world. And that's how I started the company. But, to get there, for me, it was like, how was I going to manage this journey? I was testing with a competitor's meter. It was $4 a strip. It was really expensive. And so I was like, well, these strips shouldn't be $4. So I drew up a list of about 100 different manufacturers across the globe. And the business model was test 3 times a day for less than the cost of a latte. So I started on a well-regulated ketogenic diet. And the first thing I did was track my macros. And people go like, people go like, macro counting? What do you want about? The only reason I did that for 30 days was so I could understand food. Do I advocate for people to be tracking their macros? No. But you've got to understand what you're eating. There are a lot of people that don't understand the difference between protein, carbs, and fats. It's a sad thing, but they don't. You don't know how many carbohydrates are in a particular food until you start looking at the labels or looking it up. And then you start to learn. Now you're tracking your macros. And when you first start, you might see no ketones in your body. So you test, you adjust, you bring your carb count down. Generally, most people, if you can get your total carbs under 20 or 30, you will find yourself getting into a state of nutritional ketosis. And you'll see your ketones go from 0.1, 2, 3, 4, and the threshold for nutritional ketosis is 0.5. You're in ketopia. That's the happy land, so to speak. And this is when the real magic starts to happen. So what is a well-regulated ketogenic diet? Well, in a simple phrase, it is adequate amounts of fat, moderate amounts of protein, and lots of above ground leafy vegetables. That's pretty simple if you put it into that. You know, it's not some kind of like crazy thing. Everybody talks about net carbs and total carbs and the rest of it. It's adequate fat, moderate amount of protein, lots of above ground leafy vegetables. Now, what do I mean by adequate fat? Well, if you were like me and had 210 pounds on your body, and actually your real set point is probably between 175 and 180, you probably had a fair amount of fat there that you could utilize. Once you're in a state of nutritional ketosis, your liver can metabolize your bodily fat or dietary fat that you are eating for use for energy. So if you have enough fat and protein together at a meal, and that's moderate protein, you have a hormonal response of ghrelin that gives you that feeling of satiety. How many times has somebody you've ordered the steak and you've already got the big one and you're having a special dinner, you know, and you have this big old steak and you get about halfway through it and you honestly say, look, I'm stuffed. I couldn't eat anymore. And you push that away. That does not happen with double chocolate cake. Double chocolate cake, there is no feedback loop to the human body that says, you've had enough. And I know I can eat a lot of chocolate cake. And even worse, my nemesis is milk chocolate hobnobs made in England. It even says on the side of the packet, 1 nibble and you're nobbled. Because they know it. They know that carbohydrate, which gets turned to glucose in the body, irrespective of the name that it is, that lights up the same pleasure centers as cocaine does. And we get addicted to carbs. The reason, you know, I was trapped into that fat body of mine was a carb addiction. And that is really hard to beat that mentally and physically. Physically, we can change it, but the mental, when Pavlov dogs rings its bell that you're having your cup of tea and you want to have a cookie with it, that's where the challenge comes in. So coming back to where I started testing for the different foods, and I would test before a meal and then after a meal. And if I didn't see anything more than a 30-point rise, that said to me, that's a low carb meal, that's fine. So I would check off that box and say, I can eat that for breakfast, or I can eat that for lunch, or I can eat that for dinner. So what happened was I tested a lot to begin with, but after a while, I learned my bio-individuality. I learned what is right for me. And in such, using a tool like ours, we become the training wheels for your body. We are the training wheels to help guide you along the way. But in the end, you learn to cast off the training wheels because you know what you need for your body. And so I'll probably be one of the only people who sell a ketone meter in the world saying, you know, I don't want you to test in the end, because we have done our job on our website of showing you delicious recipes, of giving you how-tos and videos. And if you've listened to your coaches who are helping you along this journey, you will not need us anymore, because you know how to live a healthy, vital life that can go for a great deal of health span. We're looking at health span as being the most important piece. I think it's quite sad here in America, with the massive advances in medical care, that now the younger generation have less of a life expectancy than their parents. Isn't that sad? It should not be like that. And that is because of the garbage that we are awash in society, especially in Western society. And then people will say, well, we've got starving people in the world. I don't have any lack of food here in America. We don't have a food problem. We have a transportation and distribution problem for other people. And that's the classic. We even have food deserts in America, which I think is disgusting. Why should a salad cost $19? You know, and in some places, you know, this is ridiculous, where we subsidize corn, soy, and wheat in America, which has caused the obesity epidemic, which has made our healthcare costs the largest in the world. And that is fundamentally where we need to change. My goal with Keto Mojo is for us to ultimately change the farm bill. And we can do that by having a market forcing function. When people shop the outer aisle, and it's really easy to shop for keto, you want to shop the outer aisle. You know, the morgue is in the middle, leave that alone. The outer aisle is where you want to do that. Nice, good, fresh vegetables, nice quality of meats that you can afford with your pocketbook, which is very important, and moderate amount, and adequate fat. A question was asked about how to do this economically. Well, fat is actually nutrient dense. So if you think about it, you get almost 2 kilocalories more. So I think it's, I forget the actual thing. It is, fat has almost twice as much calories to it than a carbohydrate. So if you think about that, that's amazingly nutrient dense, and you want adequate quality fats. You know, my grandmother was a generation that she would save her bacon fat, or you know, from the chicken that she would cook with it, or the tallow from when she was cooking out of meat, and it was always in the refrigerator. I even remember once she would sometimes put it on a little bit of toast, which I always thought was weird. We don't recommend combining carbohydrates and fats. That's not a good thing. But she lived to 96 years of age, and we always had a fresh home-cooked meal. As a young lad, I was taught to cook. I think it's sad that we're maybe 2 generations away from people who know how to cook. You know, we're relying on restaurants, and restaurants are going to be feeding you the same thing that the USDA want you to eat. The USDA give us our guidelines, but it's the fox guarding the hen house, because they've decided that they want to subsidize corn, soy, and wheat. And so what's ultimately happening is they're going to try and sell you that. So first of all, shop the outer aisle. That's the most important piece. The second thing, yes?
I love what you said about the meter. And in this case, ladies and gents, we're talking about the Keto Mojo meter is meant to be the training wheels. So I would love for you to tell us a little bit more about how the Keto Mojo meter differs from other meters. And also, if you can jump in there and tell us the difference between testing for urine versus breath versus blood ketones. Why is it that you've chosen to focus on testing blood ketones as opposed to the other two?
I'll do the latter question first and then go to the former. So, because that will lead to each of them. So there's 3 types of ketones in the body. You kind of like think of it like a backing group of singers. You have maybe the 2 ladies either side here, acetoacetate and acetone. And the acetone represents about 2% of the energy in the body and is more of an exhaust, and that comes out in the breath. So you can have a breathalyzer to potentially measure that. Then you have in the urine acetoacetate. Acetoacetate is a very volatile chemical and quickly gets shunted and transferred into beta hydroxybutyrate. Beta hydroxybutyrate is the big base in the middle, represents about 70% of the energy that is in the body. And it's a very stable compound. So it is easily measured in the blood in tiny, tiny quantities. And this is the gold standard of measuring. It's been done in all the clinical trials and studies. Why is that? You would think, well, what about the urine? Well, the urine gets spilled only maybe, the acetoacetate gets spilled only when you're first starting. And then what happens is as your body adjusts and your mitochondria changes to accept ketones, it is no longer spilled. Your body is very frugal and economic with energy. It would not want to waste any energy unnecessarily. And so to quantitatively measure in the urine is really hard. You get a homogeny of a period of time before. And what you're trying to measure in that is basically from something that you have no quantifiable piece. If you are more hydrated or less hydrated, the levels will change within the blood. And the urinalysis strips were designed specifically originally for type 1 diabetics who would get ketoacidosis. So they've been designed to be used in the greater millimole area. And so to be honest with you, for when you're first starting, maybe week 1, yeah, you can use urinalysis. But after that, it doesn't. And it bothers me so much that people, especially in the commerce world, are trying to make money off of the community. And you'll see all of these different types of urinalysis strips available for sale on Amazon. And so about a week ago, I launched a new product, and inside there, it's going to really tell you the truth. To say, hey, it'll only work for a certain period of time. But there's also, hey, if you want a free guide, here it is. And guess what? I don't want you to be out of your money when you realize you just sold me something for $5. We'll give you a coupon that when you want to get a blood meter, you can actually get your money back. So it hasn't cost you anything. And then you've got to learn. And we decided not to make any money on it. We decided that it will be a break-even product, and we'll just introduce it out there because we need to make it affordable and easy. And sometimes people want to have the easy first, let me dip my toe in. So those are the three different types of tests. I'll come to the breath. Breath is really hard because it's such a small molecule that you're trying to measure in parts per million off of the breath. Now, the science, they can measure it with a mass spectrometer. And all the science that is done on breath has been done on the mass spec and not on those little mini breathalyzers. Those mini breathalyzers, what will happen is there's a huge amount of variability. After a while, the sensor gets coked with contaminants. They put it through a burn cycle to try and get rid of that. But eventually the sensor can't be replaced and you end up with a really nice, paperweight. So the gold standard is blood. That's what all clinicians use. That's all what doctors use. That is what's used in oncology. It is what's used for reversing polycystic ovarian syndrome. It's what is used for reversing type 2 diabetes. That's the gold standard.
I like that you acknowledge that there's a time and a place for everything, because when I do cleanses with people, and it's just that 7-day period, we do the urine because it's easy, it's less expensive and things of that nature. And then what I'm hearing from you, as you become more acclimated to the ketogenic lifestyle and to that state in your being, then it's time to shift over to the blood meter so that you get more insight. And so now I would love for you to share a little bit more about the features of the meter itself, and how it compares to other meters, and why is it that you decided to test not only ketones but also glucose?
Great point. Glucose and ketone testing, I think, come hand in hand. If you're only testing one of those, you're only seeing half the picture and you're not seeing the full picture of what's going on in the body. Now, you can go on Amazon and you can find ketone testers. There's a lot of poorly made ones that are on the marketplace, and they don't have what's known as a 510K. When you test glucose, you are under an FDA mandate. That means that people will adjust their insulin, their bolus, to your meter, and you have to conform to very strict standards. We are what's known as a class 2 medical device. If somebody gets their bolus wrong of insulin, we can get a hypoglycemia episode really, really, really quickly. And so that's the importance of it. So if you have a meter that does glucose and ketones, you know it's definitely passed its 510K from the federal government. And to do that, your manufacturing line has to be inspected. There's certain levels of your products, your strips coming in have to have clear clinicals every single time. We have to maintain control of the supply chain. We keep it in temperature controlled, so it's the most optimal it is. We do studies on our strips so that even if it goes on that last mile and gets warmed up, within it, I've actually baked our strips at 65 degrees Celsius for 2 weeks and had no degradation on it. So I know in the truck it's going to be perfect. So this is what a high quality device is. So first of all, now when you take a look at them, it's like, why would I measure glucose and ketones? Well, for the practitioner, if you are in a state of if your patient is in a state of nutrition ketosis, or the person you are cooking, you know that they are adhering to what you have asked of them. You know that they're eating the right foods that you want them. They're in a state of nutritional ketosis. So that accountability becomes the most important. I think there was a study done where they said that 32% of people don't take their pills. How can you try and imagine trying to get a populace to eat in a certain way? Of course, we're not going to get people who want to do it. They're going to fall off the wagon and have that milk chocolate hobnob when they're not supposed to. But by testing, now you have that almost gamification. I remember when I seen the needle move of it, like going from 0.2 to 0.3 and getting 0.5 into ketopia. I was like, yeah, I've got this, because I now have the feeling of control over my body in a quantified manner. So first of all, when we're testing before a meal and after meal, and we utilize glucose for this, we want to keep that glucose spike low, under about 30 points. Roughly, most people at stasis should have the perfect glucose around about 83, somewhere in the 80s and the 90s. And you don't want to go up more than 30 points like that. So 110, 120 is your upper limit after a meal. If you're having a high carb meal and you're getting into the 148s and 150s, this is not what you want. A fasting glucose measurement of 140 is actually pre-diabetic. So why are we kind of like pushing our glucose? Does anyone know how much glucose you need in 10 pints of blood? Anyone want to have a guess? It's 2 teaspoons in 10 pints of blood. You go and have that healthy granola bar and you work that 29 grams of carbs, divide that by 4, guess how much glucose you're having in your body? 4 times what it really needs. Now your poor pancreas has to secrete insulin to manage that. So this is where glucose measurements is really important. For somebody who's a type 2 diabetic or is on medications, always do it under a doctor's supervision, because a ketogenic lifestyle is prescription strength. The biggest worry of Verda Health in San Francisco is having a hypoglycemia incident in the first few days, because it's working so quick and so well. If they're on a medication that is artificially trying to suppress their levels, they could get this hypoglycemia. And that's why, for a medical practitioner, following the glucose in those first days and deprescribing, guess that, deprescription is their problem. That's how amazing it is. So that deprescribing. But for the average user, wanting to know, my wife and I, we live in the Napa Valley. I've lived a low carb lifestyle since 2015, but I do like my wine. So we have a personal phrase that we save our carbs for wine. And I will test before and we'll test after, and we're just seeing how much we can do. Will I still be in a state of nutritional ketosis after a Chinon from the Loire Valley? Maybe. Would I be able to do it from a Napa Valley cab? Maybe not. Napa Valley cabs are usually high in residual sugar, and they've got alcohol at 14.5 or much, and that alcohol level plays havoc with your liver. So this is how I can then choose and customize my way of life, my way of living, and not live to the lowest common denominator of like the 20-gram carb rule. How do you live more vital in your life? Only if you can quantify it. Test, don't guess. So the former part of your question is like, what do you get with a meter? What are the features and benefits of it? Well, we've just released October 1, our second generation of meter. It's called the GK Plus, and I'm super happy with it. We looked at every aspect of our old meter and was like, how do we make this better? The old meter, you had to flip open the battery pack at the back, and you had to press a little button to try and set it up. And you had to press here and then press the front, and press here and press the button. I had to do a really long, like 15-minute video of how to set up. That was it. Now, you get your packet, you download your app, you pull the battery tab at the back, which activates it. The Bluetooth light comes on the front, and you press sync on your phone, and date and time and everything is done, and you are ready to go. Easy, no problem. Before, our strips used to come in vials. Well, once you pop the top of the vial, that means the clock starts ticking. You've got 6 months to use those up. Like I said before, my goal is for people not to test. You test a lot to begin with, and after a while, it might be, instead of daily or before and after a meal, it might be weekly, because you kind of like, out of curiosity. And so if you've got the clock ticking on your strips, we didn't want people to be in a position where they had wasted strips or weren't getting good quality data. So we individually packaged them all to make that easier. We went from a 4 amperic electrode to an 8, which we have temperature sensors and hematocrit sensors that is in there to ensure that we get a reliability. In clinical terms, we have a what's known as a coefficient, an R. We have a 0.9974. That is, and then we did that on 352 tests. That's testing us against a bench $30,000 YSI analyzer, and we were getting that close every single time. 100% within the FDA standards, which is within 20%. 100% of the time within the European more strict standards, which is within 15% of the time. And I think we are sort of like 95% of the time we're within 10%, and then maybe like 70% of the time within 5%. That is really, really good, because we're actually measuring 1/5 of a drop of blood. And the other cool thing is we introduced what I call super sip technology. Basically is we calculated the aperture of how the little tube that sucks up the blood. And it sucks it up in a cool manner. It does it by using atomic attraction. Basically, that's how it moves up through capillary action. It's the same way that trees work, of bringing capillary action that brings the water up. So that's how it works. I kind of like think that's cool. We're working at an atomic level. Only I could geek out on this, perhaps. But that's how that super sip, that high speed, means that in the old way, when it was slower, the blood would go up almost at an angle. But now it goes up really quick. We don't get the fill errors we had before. We get more reliability between the actual tests. And then for people, because there's nothing, even I know it, you do it and you don't quite get it right, and you've wasted a strip, and you're like, oh, that's $1 I've just wasted. But not now, because when I introduced the meter back in 2017, strips were $4 to $5. We said $1 a strip, test 3 times a day for less than the cost of a latte. But now we've dropped the price by a further 20% on ketone strips. So they're 80 cents direct from our website. And then we've also combined them with glucose strips. So you get a combo, and then you can get 120 strips for like 50 cents, which is an amazing price. Our goal is, how do we make it as affordable as possible to the widest audience as possible, so we can affect the maximum amount of change, get people to have that market forcing function, shop the outer aisle, eat healthily, lower the costs on society for medical pieces. So we had change in strip price, change in the way that we package them, better quality of manufacturing in the technology that was used in it, a smaller format of the device. We dropped the price from $60 for the meter down to $45 for the meter, included Bluetooth in it. But wait, there's more. We have spent the last year creating a secure, HIPAA-compliant, encrypted health cloud on 2 continents, Europe and America. And now you can track your device, all your measurements on your app, or you can put it to the cloud. And now you can connect with like 9 other different EHR platforms like Chronometer. So if you don't like my graphs, you can choose Chronometer graphs or any other place. And then the ultimate goal is for people to be able to share that with their coaches, with their oncologists, with their radiologists, with their primary care physician. And so we get data-driven outcomes. Right now, a doctor or a practitioner will go to you, I'd like you to do this, come back and see me in 8 weeks. That's not how you change a person's life. Why is it a psychologist says, come back to me next week, or come back to me tomorrow? Because what we are in the business of doing is changing someone's habits. When you go into the army or the military, you're going to go in a boot camp, because they are instilling a new you to conform to their way of it. What you need to do on a well-regulated ketogenic is change the habits that have caused this problem for you in the past. Our goal is, ideally, we don't want people to use my meter. Our goal is, I want you to come to my website, look at our fantastic recipes, and before you become pre-diabetic, before you become overweight, that you realize that this is a more optimal way to life, because it's a lot easier to do that than to try and fix metabolic damage. I know what it's like when I was trying to lose that weight. The scales go up and down. They lie to you every day, and you see the general trend. But blood doesn't lie. Blood reinforces that the choices you are making are right for you. And that, to me, is the most important thing. What is right for you and your body, and the way that you want to live, your optimal quantified self. So our goal is, how do we bring these tools, the information, and the methodologies so that you can be as successful as possible? And then with those little training wheels, put them aside when you don't need us. But perhaps when you need to do the reboot, when you might have had one too many Napa Valley cabs, that you then test again and get yourself back into the way that you're doing. So I like to think about ways that this also can help. I personally like to do intermittent fasting too. So intermittent fasting could be just maybe doing the OMAD, the 1 meal a day, maybe in a 16/8 format. Sometimes my wife and I like to do more therapeutic fasts, and I think our longest fast was 5 days. Well, when I mentioned before, there's a physiological change. It takes about 12 weeks for your body to become fully fat adapted. That's what we see with athletes. Their performance drops off for a while, but as the mitochondria changes, then they get better. You get more metabolically flexible. You don't have to have 30 grams of carbs. You can perhaps have 40 or 50 or more. So, but what I found when fasting, and it's fasting muscles are important to build up. If you look at ancestral health, they talk about the great hunger and the little hunger. The great hunger is famine. Nobody wants to be in the great hunger, but the little hunger, you learn how to deal with that. But it is the Pavlov's dog ringing its bell. It's 5 o'clock. You got to reach in to make yourself a cocktail or get that little snack. And what I found is that, normally my ketones are between 1.1 and 1.7. That means I'm fully fueled, ready to go. That's my sweet spot. And then if I feel myself, I want to go and reach into the refrigerator, I do a quick test. And when I'm fasting, my ketones are 2.5, 3.5 or more. So what I'm seeing in the blood is that's telling me I've got plenty of energy going on there. So what is going on? If I've got almost twice as much energy as I had before in my bloodstream, why am I having this kind of like, I think I'm hungry? Glass of water, get myself busy, and that wave goes. And that's how you learn your body. You might start off with 16/8, and then you go up onto like, okay, I'm going to take it up to maybe 24 hours. And then you go on to 36, and you do that and you recover and you eat and you continue on. And then eventually it's nice to pulse in that therapeutic fast, because that kind of detox, that kind of cleanse is a game changer, because your body now doesn't have to focus on dealing with all the food or anything like that. It is using apoptosis and autophagy to cleanse away everything that you've got there. When you want to do a kitchen remodel, you come and bring in your brand new cabinets and the new countertops with all the other stuff already in the room. No. What you do is you take out your old cabinets, you take out all your old pits, and you get that out there and you clean the room down. That is what apoptosis is. That is what autophagy is. It's clearing out all the organelles that you don't need within your body. But what happens on a longer term basis, and this happens roughly on day 2 to 3, you have a 1,200% increase in human growth hormone. 1,200%. There used to be bodybuilders that would synthesize that from cadavers to pump it into their bodies to try and get swole. We can do it naturally. Eat, stop, eat. It's an incredible method. But now you've got all this human growth hormone. Those are your brand new cabinets going on in, and you've just had a great new body remodel, and it didn't cost you a thing. So when people talk to me about, is this affordable? And that was another question, is this affordable at a corner store or a food desert? Well, first of all, to maybe the unmarried, to the single mom, got several kids, got to have cooks in for them, and cook for that, busy doing 2 jobs. 1 meal a day is fantastic, because you don't get all of that extra work for breakfast and lunch. You can just say do 1. And you can focus on nutrient-dense, good quality foods. So you actually get more time in your world, and perhaps spend a little bit less, because you're not on that garbage cycle of insulin up, insulin down, insulin up, snack through the day. People say, I couldn't possibly give up my Cheetos, whatever it is, like that. Every time you think about, I couldn't give up this, I couldn't give up my cake, I couldn't give up my toast in the morning. Imagine if we did that for an illegal drug or alcohol, because that's the carb addiction. But once you break that cycle and the fog lifts, that's the moment when you realize, yeah, I'm okay, I'm good. Nutrient-dense food, I only have a moderate amount of protein, which is about the palm of your hand. 2 good fists of vegetables, which is on that. Zucchini is super cheap in season. I mean, like, you go anywhere in California and you leave your car door open and somebody's throwing zucchini into your car because they're growing too much. I'm into permaculture. I grow my own vegetables, and you'll be surprised how much kale will do for you, or even Swiss chard can do for you. And you just cut and come again, and cut and come again, and cut and come again, and it keeps sprouting out. And just pulling the outside of lettuce leaves, you can, in a very small plate of lime, you can have a lot of food that can come out from there. And that can be different. So there's clean keto and there's dirty keto. So you've got the clean ketos, which is sort of like the California fashionistas, you know, wanting to make sure that everything is pasture raised. They want to know the name of the cow, where it was grown, who lived it, how it was fed. And then there is dirty keto. Yeah, you can go to an In-N-Out burger and go have a 4x4 protein style. Do you know what I mean? It's super cheap, if that's what you can afford. Because, you know, in my mind, is medical bills is far more expensive than food bills. And, you know, if you kind of like say, what do you want to do? You want to be a type 2 diabetic and have 15 years less life? Do you know how many amputations are now being done in the United States? It's shocking. And it can all be reversed with a well-regulated ketogenic diet at low cost every meal.
I want to go a little bit more in the little time that we have left into the importance of monitoring, because you brought up a very important reality. As we go through the transitions, sometimes we think, oh my God, my blood glucose is going low, so I need to get something to eat, or, you know, this isn't working. And really and truly, it's not that it's not working. And I've had clients, you know, who say, oh my God, my blood sugar is dropping low. But when they check their blood glucose, it may be 85. But what's happening is really what you're referring to, which is the addiction cycle. We don't realize that it's just like the addictions that we have to cocaine or marijuana or whatever it is. When you cut off that source, your mind and your body starts to play tricks on you. So can you talk a little bit more about that, and also about who should or could use the meter, and circle back into that whole concept of bioindividuality and being able to utilize this to also detect food allergies and food sensitivities?
Yeah, really good. Okay, so let me try and pass that out. So first of all, you know, the psychological battle is the harder one. And, you know, your blood glucose 83 is about the middle. You go to our website, it'll actually tell you on the app, you know, you can click on the end and say, how is my blood glucose? So optimal is 83. Though in the morning when I wake up, I have a cortisol spike, and that pushes, that's called the dawn phenomenon. It's totally natural, but it lifts my glucose up. Same thing with stress will lift you up. And so I know I can be in the 90s there. And that's my set point. That's my bio-individuality. That's what I know about an hour after waking. Now, when you think about it and you're saying, oh, I feel a bit jittery. Well, when your body's first starting, it's suddenly got all of these ketones into it, and it might not be fully understanding or be able to accept those. And people think, oh, I'm going hyperglycemic. Well, the question is are you? And hyperglycemic, you know, normally an alarm of a hyperglycemia alarm will go off in about the 70s. That's what our set point is on our meter, is about 70 of a blood glucose level. I've been on extended fasts, and I've had my blood glucose at a 50, but I've been protected from all of the the effects of having a low blood glucose, because I had high ketones. This is the important piece. You're in the air, you know, glucose needs a transporter, a ship, to get over the blood-brain barrier, but ketones do not. Think about that. Glucose needs a ship to help it. It needs an aid, but ketones do not. What do you think is potentially our default state then? Something that needs a crutch, a help, a GLUT1 or GLUT2 transporter, or actual ketones that can just throw it around, sort you out, get you sorted. So that helps with the knowing what you are on the quantified self, can help you with the psychological win that. Testing before a meal and then after a meal can make sure so that can assure you that, hey, what you are eating is low carb. I like to go out for Indian food. You know, people go like, you go out for an Indian dinner? Yeah, of course I do. I love Indian cuisine. It's fantastic. But I don't have the naan bread, and I don't have the rice. And our local Tibetan place, they know that. They do a little broccoli and spinach dish that really goes with there. We make sure that we have like a butter-based sauce. We love sag paneer, which is absolutely great. And we order about 5 different dishes, and it's perfectly well. And we tested ourselves after that and know that they're not putting additional things in the sauces that would be a problem for us. And we've also known that our carb edge, I talk about the carb edge, is how many carbs can you? If you're an athlete and you're pretty busy, or you've got a heavy workload, you could probably have more than 20 or 30 grams of carbs and not sweat it. Somebody says, if I ate this, I ate a carrot, will it kick me out of ketosis? I don't know. Test, don't guess. And that's the beauty. Once you get that affirmation of what you're doing is right, you hone it in and become much better at dialing in what you need for that. So get yourself your baseline so that you know what's happening on a daily basis and know what is right for you. Then you start sleuthing out foods. And you asked about trigger foods. Sugar, alcohols, I think, is the #1 problem that a lot of people have. So you go and have a keto cookie because it says keto on the label, so it must be keto. It must be good for me. Is it? Well, if you test your glucose afterwards and you don't see a glycemic response, you'd be like, yeah, my glucose is great. But what happens if your ketones came down after it? What happened at that moment? What happened was that sugar alcohol actually gave you an insulin response. And it is this insulin that is causing a lot of the inflammation that is within the body. We shouldn't be having these massive amounts of insulin. What happens if you look on a cellular level along the arteries is as they get fattier, they expand out like that, allowing for fissures to come on in. And then the small dense cholesterol particles go on in to plug up those fissures. And this is how we get plaque on the arteries. Everyone says, like, every time you saw a fire and you saw a fireman there, would you say that it's the fireman that's causing the fires? Well, that's what an epidemiological study is going to tell you. But what if you actually stopped that fissure from happening? You wouldn't need the fireman. I go to my doctor, I get my blood work done, and I always go like, you've got high cholesterol. And I go like, yeah, I know. Now, can you do an NMR test and tell me the size of those particles? Because a high cholesterol is like a big circus marquee. You can have the big fluffy clowns that are absolutely nice, or you can have an axe-wielding clown, which is the small dense particles. I have nice fluffy clowns all over the place with pies into your face and having a laugh. None of the bad stuff. And so it is important that you know the size of the particle. So we covered a little when to test.
One little interjection for those people who are not familiar with sugar alcohols, anything that has the OL, so like xylitol. And I keep telling people that, in some ways it would be even better if you just ate the sugar, because sometimes your response is even more accelerated than if you had just ordinary honey or something of that nature. And that's why we keep saying, please test. Do not make the assumption that just because it's not a carbohydrate or it's not a quote unquote sugar, that it is not going to have that kind of effect on your body in terms of triggering the insulin response. And that is what I love so much about the meter, that it also helps people to identify food sensitivities, because with the food sensitivity issue, it could be something that is quote unquote good and healthy that is just not good for you.
Yeah.
But you wouldn't know if you weren't doing these types of assessments. So
yeah, I mean, there's 58 different names for sugar. Xylitol, erythritol, sorbitol, mannitol, all of those tolls will take their toll, if you kind of like remember there. Now, there are some like monk fruit, and there are some erythritols that I can actually personally manage. And I know that I'm okay generally with erythritol, but mannitol and sorbitol and xylitol, no, those ones will definitely not work for me and my body in that respect.
So we have one question. If you can talk about the testing itself, and I know most people are really hesitant when they think about, oh, I got to prick myself. So if you have some special tips on where to test and things of that
Yeah.
nature, for those of us who are like, ooh.
I have a bunch of little small 3-minute, 2-minute videos in which to follow along. But first of all, use the edge of your finger here, the edge, not the tip. Hey, the tips of our fingers is the most sensitive. Why on earth would you do it there? I see people on these YouTuber influencers and they go like that and then they wince. And I go, well, of course you're going to wince because you're doing it in a silly place. Side of your fingers are here on the edge. And then I actually go through the sides of my fingers and I alternate between it. I will take my little pen, which is like that. And there's two different ways you can do it. You can get these little one-use pipettes, but they're called pips, I think, but they're pretty expensive. Or you can get a great lancet like this. And there's different gauges that you can get. We use a 30 gauge because predominantly we believe that a 30 gauge will get the exact kind of like amount that you need. And then you have a little, it's going to be hard for me to show on here, but there's a little depth selector there. So you can adjust this to your skin. If you're a robust man, mechanic, and got big, thick calories, you might want to go a little bit different. If you have delicate English hands like me, you might not. I actually am more in the Goldilocks number 3 zone, which is how you would do it.
You're more the kitty lancet, huh?
Yeah, I like that. And then you have your strips. You have like your ketone strips, which is in the blue, and then you have your glucose strips, which is in like that. And generally, what I do is I'll open up my strips whilst I'm doing it, get them ready to begin with on the table, a nice clean table is what I'm doing. And, I might even actually go and do this live on camera. Like, well, that would be an absolute mistake. I would grab, say, I would wash my hands, warm soap and water. The warm soap and water is really great. That warmth will give you a little bit of extra vascularity. Or if I haven't got that, I'll use an alcohol swab like this that I'm about to do it. And I'll just clean the area on camera, I'm just cleaning it a little bit like that. And then I let that blow on off as I am ready and preparing myself. So you've got it ready. I've set my depth selector here to 3 because that's me and my goal line. And then I pull the little applicator piece at the back there. So essentially it's sort of like ready to fire. And then I'm going to use the size of that. So you can play with the depth that is right for your vascularity. And you can just press that like that and you're done. And there's a little, if I can get that up, there's a little bit of a red droplet that's beginning to come on up there. And I'll put the strip into the meter. It'll light up on the front. It'll go beep. There you go. And it tells me it's ready. And I see the icon flashing. And then I just touch the tip to the actual bead and the drop like that. And it sucks it up. Beep, it's ready to go. And then within 5 seconds, I'm going to have my blood glucose. Let's see if I'm stressed. I'm at 93, which is not too bad. For me, I'm on camera talking to a bunch of people and I always get a little bit nervous. Now, ketones. I was drinking some red wine late last night. Gemma left me with a little bit more than she should have done. So this is where I find out whether or not we had a Shannon from the was it a Shannon from the Loire Valley, James? Yeah, she's nodding. I can see her there at me. And we have ketones at 3.1.
Wow.
In the zone. Look at that.
Awesome.
See how happy I am on that one there? Because live on camera, I got a good ketone. That's really good. I haven't had breakfast. I've had half a sausage today as a snack, just because I'm fine. That's what I fancied a little bit. And all that. Now, and this is a technical thing, because I don't have a thing like that. So we all do it. So I apologize.
So,
it's as simple as that.
Awesome. And I really want to thank you for being here with us tonight. And I know you have a phenomenal gift for us in terms of a special offer. I have put the link into the chat, and I will also send the link to you tomorrow for you and anyone else who registered. I'm actually going to send the recording of this along with the link for this special offer. So you can tell us a little bit more about what this special offer is, Dorian.
Yeah, so you'll get, I believe it's 15% off your meter kit price. There's 2 levels of kits. You have the basic meter kits. If you want to dip your toe in and just say, I want to do that, they're about $45. You'll save yourself 15% off that price, and the meter will be shipped to you for free shipping. It comes from our warehouse in Savannah, Georgia. So most places within 3 to 5 days-ish. You should get it on that one. The best deal is to buy the promo bundle, because the promo bundle, not only do you get I think it's a 107-page guide how-to, you get 70 ketone and 70 glucose strips. You also get a huge selection of different savings through our partners like Chronometer and Keto. Chalk Zero, I think, is on there, and a few other pieces that come on into play. So you get a huge amount out of it. We have a lifetime warranty on our product. No other meter company in the world does that. I have fantastic US-based customer service team. I love those ladies, Erica and Emily and Michelle. Big up, shout out to you guys. You know, if you're having any challenges, you can either, best way is do a Facebook Messenger or by email, or, you know, if you need to have somebody on the phone, we'll help you and we will get you testing and make sure that you're super happy with it. But that's an amazing deal. So,
Yes.
you know, but although we give you all of that information, if it wasn't for people like you, you are the tip of the spear. You know, everybody needs a coach and a guide in life. I just provide the tool, but you provide the nuance and the subtlety of interpretation. You know, you don't want to live your life by just a number.
No.
It's a guide. It's to help you on your way. And, you know, higher is not necessarily better on ketones. We all have our own set point of where we need. And eventually we cast off those training wheels and live a really vital, gorgeous life.
I love what you're saying about casting off the training wheels, because that is what I share with people. As an educator for over 25 years, I know that when my students don't need me anymore, that's when I can give myself a pat on the back, because that's when I can say a job well done. If you still need me, that doesn't make me proud. That doesn't make me happy. So in alignment with that, as you said, part of it is having that assistance, that mentorship, and that cheerleader as you're going through this journey, because there are going to be times when you're saying, oh my God, is this working? What the heck? Michelle. And for those of you who are interested, I would love for you to join us on our Eat to Live journey, which is going to be a 3-month program. And our official meter is the Keto Mojo, because I truly believe in blending the glucose monitoring along with the ketones monitoring. They go hand in hand. And I've seen too many things happen where people are not doing both, and it's misleading. You may think that you're good, but if you don't have the other side of the equation, it can end you up in some serious issues.
And that's where the GKI can help, which we didn't touch on, the glucose ketone index, which is your glucose measurement adjusted into millimoles divided by your ketone measurement.
Exactly.
But if you use the app, we tell you automatically on the app and do all the calculations so you don't have to do the math. Because then you're knowing that if you've got a nice low GKI, you're keeping your glucose down nice.
Exactly.
You've got a good amount of ketones in there. It's used a lot more in oncology, but we're finding it moving in a lot more into weight loss and for other people.
Absolutely phenomenal, because everything is about keeping things in context. You know, too often in our quote unquote medical world, numbers are looked at in isolation and they can give false pictures. So I truly, truly am grateful for you sharing your time with us tonight. I encourage all of you to definitely get a Keto Mojo, get your mojo back, as Dorian would say. And his before and after picture is testimony enough for me. And if you would like to have, you know, more assistance in terms of not only the aspect of testing and things of that nature, but also in terms of being able to go through all of the craziness that's out there, what I refer to as diet dogmas and food religions, that can make anybody sane insane. There's too many conflicting ideologies out there. And really and truly, that is the sweet spot that we're talking about here, which is bio-individuality, where you're not going off of what somebody says or somebody else's experience, but you're finding out how to find your sweet spot through looking at various assessments and understanding how different foods affect the body in different ways. And that is our Eat to Live journey. In any case, thank you everyone for joining us tonight. I will be sending out, like I said, the recording of this. If you're looking at a recording of this, feel free to reach out to us to get more information. Bye.
Thank you.